Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I'm extremely, sincerely, truly humbled to have to introduce to you the video of Jen Easterly. Truly humbled, Jen. And of course, Jen is the 2018 James Foley Hostage Freedom Awardee. Because Jen really did a lot to deserve it, and I don't know all the things you did, but I know few things. And I know that you played a crucial role in the White House hostage policy review. But more importantly, you became a real key human figure for the American families of the American hostages. You became a warm and compassionate figure at the highest level of the Obama administration, a person that the families could go to, would always be available to meet with them. You were truly invested. You really cared. You were always available to explain to the families the new hostage policy process, always available to hear them and to be their messenger. Nobody ever played that role. You showed us the way. So tonight, on behalf of the families and others who helped them, I just want to thank you for being who you are and for showing us the way to continue. And now there's an amazing video to tell you more of what Jen did. Thank you again, Jen, for just who you are.
I am delighted to honor Jen Easterly with our 3rd annual James Foley Hostage Freedom Award, because I feel that Jen was essential to the changes that have been made to improve our hostage recovery and to work with families.
The issue of hostages really represented for me the very lowest points and some of the highest points of my time at the National Security Council staff. From the fall of Mosul to ISIS in early summer of 2014, to the highly courageous, highly complex, but ultimately failed hostage rescue attempt in July of 2014, to the brutal murders of our citizens and British citizens that began in August of 2014.
We were not set up and organized as a government to deal with the problem of U.S. citizens being taken abroad by terrorist groups. I remember Jen coming in and saying that we needed to do this in a way that was going to be different and have, frankly, 2 very important features that were not usually resident in the traditional National Security Council policymaking process. And that was transparency to those outside the government and involvement and inclusion of those not part of the government national security bureaucracy, namely the families who'd had loved ones killed.
As a factual matter, you could look at the data and you could only conclude that we weren't succeeding. We weren't producing good outcomes. And by good outcomes, the first good outcome, of course, is the safe recovery of a U.S. citizen held abroad. We weren't doing that.
Even as an agent, knowing everyone would tell you there's a need for a policy review. It doesn't matter when the opportunity arises. You know, the whole government spins in action if there's an opportunity to bring someone home.
Fusion cell sort of sounds like this buzzword, but if you think about a fusion cell as just professionals who are operating at the top of their game, sitting together and working together on a day-to-day basis.
I think the families would agree there's really only one metric of success here, and that is safe recovery of every American who is held against his or her will in a hostage setting overseas. And by that metric, we still have a long way to go to achieve the kind of success we want. And yet I think we feel good, or at least we felt good at the time I left government, that we had put in place a structure that allowed for much more rigorous and careful and systematic tracking of all of the different efforts being carried out across the government.
I mean, in my experience, you know, somebody once said it takes a village, and in hostage cases, it certainly takes a village. And it doesn't work with just the government. It doesn't work with just a non-profit such as myself. It doesn't work with just a family and their wider community. It's the power of bringing all of those forces together to wrap around a family.
I keep a couple things on my desk that remind me of the most important things that I did, that I felt that I was able to be a part of in government. And one of the things I keep on my desk are these shot glasses. They've got pictures of Houston on them, and they were given to me by Deborah and Mark Tice at my going away party from the White House. And it's for Austin and me to drink a shot of bourbon when he comes back. And you know, not only does that remind me of Austin, but it reminds me of all our citizens who are still being held unjustly abroad by terrorist groups.
Jen often said that government policy gets made meeting to meeting, by driving good meetings. You didn't want to show up for Jen's meetings without having made progress on those issues.
You could see it in her eyes during meetings, just how important it was that she was doing right by the families.
I didn't know Jen Easterly when I came over. I certainly heard about Jen and her reputation as a driving force, and I have a lot of respect for Jen because in the government you need to push things, and you need to, you know, people say be innovative, think out the box. You need to have a vision, and Jen certainly had a vision.
Jen, in my mind, did a terrific job of bringing everybody together around the idea that however painful this was necessary work.
Jen Easterly was the one person who stood out after our ordeal and seemed to hear the pain we had endured, and also seemed to have a resolve to improve what had happened.
She is able to inspire her team to do great work, and to not only work long hours, but to do great work with compassion and integrity. And being able to inspire that in a team, that's what great leaders do.
So it is with great excitement and pleasure that we welcome Jen Easterly to the
Thanks so much. This is truly an amazing and humbling honor for me. You know, I've often said that my job as Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the White House was one of the best that I'll ever have. It was working with a team that became my family. Brilliant colleagues on issues of great import and impact for leadership that I truly admired and respected. It was a time of incredible highs, but also some incredible lows. None more so than on July 3rd, 2014. So on that afternoon, I was sitting in a small enclave of the White House Situation Room complex, along with several other senior officials awaiting the results of a highly complex hostage rescue operation executed in the dead of night deep into ISIS-controlled territory in Syria. The military had proposed the operation to the president, and despite its complexity and its danger, he had approved it immediately. The operation proceeded near flawlessly, though when the commandos reached the location where the hostages were supposed to be held, several minutes elapsed before the words came back to us. Dry hole. The hostages have been moved, and we had failed completely. And a little over a month later, the horrors began, where courageous journalists and aid workers, Jim Foley, Stephen Sotloff, Alan Henning, David Haynes, Peter Kassig, Kayla Mueller, were taken from us. The brightest of lights, the best of their respective generations, extinguished in the dark horror of ISIS's evil. The anguish and the anger of their parents and their families, and later the families of Luke Summers and Warren Weinstein, that the government had not done enough to bring their loved ones home safely, that we had not treated them with the respect and attention that they deserved, that our processes and our organizations were opaque and confusing, were all completely justified and energized an order from the president to conduct a comprehensive review of our hostage policy. Many of us in the room today were part of that, and I think it was one of the most complex but ultimately rewarding things that we got to work on. While I was privileged to play a role in that review, this was more than anything in almost 30 years in the government, a team effort, starting with the foundational work of the so-called Tiger Team, led by the National Counterterrorism Center and my good friend Nick Rasmussen and Lieutenant General Bennett Sokolic, the Counterterrorism Security Group, which were senior officials in counterterrorism across the entire government, from the Department of Justice and State, and Homeland Security, Treasury, Defense, the National Counterterrorism Center, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, all working closely together to put together options for a new policy and new organizational structures by review for the Deputies Committee led by my amazing boss, Lisa Monaco, for review and decision by the President, who stayed very close to this issue throughout the 8 months that it took us to do this review. And while this was a truly whole-of-government effort, it was really those outside government that played the most important role in this and were the most influential in helping us to get it right. Specifically, the families. I felt, as did Lisa, that we needed to bring their voice into the effort and to make them true partners. Now, my views were informed by my own experience over a decade earlier when the life of my little brother Elias was cut short, just before his 26th birthday. Now, the circumstances of Eli's death were very different, but I had seen and experienced the devastating impact that the loss of a child can have on a family. Ensuring that the voices of the families and the voices of their loved ones through their fathers and their mothers and their sisters and their brothers and their partners and their friends, bringing them in and making them truly heard, I knew would be the difference between whether we were able to succeed or whether we failed. So General Sokolic and his team spent hours in the living room and the family rooms of the families, ensuring that their voices were heard, listening to their concerns and ideas, and bringing them back for incorporation into the review. And I was blessed to have as my advisor throughout the effort, Diane Foley, a woman of indomitable spirit and unrelenting strength, who in the wake of such tragedy was an incredible inspiration to me, recalling for me the words of Bobby Kennedy, quoting the poet Aeschylus. In our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair against our will comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. So as grateful as I am to be recognized for this honor, it really is one that recognizes the work of so many others, first and foremost the families, but also those like David Bradley and Rachel Briggs, who've dedicated so much of their time and energy to this effort, like those who designed the effort and those who helped to implement it, like Mike McGarity, the first director of the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell, our nerve center for hostage response efforts, like Jim O'Brien, our first special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, our senior diplomat in these efforts, and also the work of the Hostage Response Group, many of whom are here today. So it's been 3 years almost to the day since the new policy was announced, and much good, I believe, has come from it. We have a whole of government effort focused at a priority level on these issues. We have better relationships between the families and the government. We have much more proactive information sharing for the families. And most importantly, we have dozens of Americans returned home safely from Iraq, from Yemen, from Iran, from Syria, from North Korea, from Egypt, from Venezuela. But even as we acknowledge the good work that we achieved across 2 administrations, we must also recognize that much remains to be done. We have to keep these new structures and processes vibrant. The Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell the Family Engagement Coordination Team, the Hostage Response Group directly accountable to the President of the United States, the Issue Manager, the Director of National Intelligence responsible for much more proactive information sharing, the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs. We must keep these structures vibrant and resourced, and we must keep these issues at the top of priority for our leadership. I'm particularly pleased to have met Robert O'Brien, our new Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, and wish him great success in his very important role. We must also, as Diane mentioned, support the families in their efforts to see justice served through prosecution in our criminal justice system of those responsible for taking the lives of their loved ones. And finally, we must see, in the words of Deborah Tice, the safest and soonest return of those still held unjustly abroad, including Austin Tice, Paul Overby, Kevin King and his Australian colleague Tim Weeks, Jeff Woodkey, Bob Levinson, and Jizhui Wang, and many others. We must not and we will not rest on our accomplishments. We must and we will continue to work tirelessly as a team. We must and we will continue to stay focused. We must and we will bring them home. I've told my son Jet, who's here with us tonight, that I wished he'd gotten to know Jim Foley, whose kindness and humanity had such an impact when he was here on Earth, and whose incredible legacy has literally impacted millions around the globe. But I've also told him that I really look forward to introducing him to Austin when Austin comes home. So on behalf of so many who care so deeply about this issue, my sincere thanks to John and Diane and the entire Foley Foundation for everything that you do to continue to promote freedom and justice and moral courage around the world, and to ensure the safe return of all Americans held unjustly abroad. Thank you.